Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Rob Bober, manager at Sedlak Supply Chain Consultants, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our fifth annual Lunch and Learn series. This is the fourth of 5 sessions that we're presenting this year, and previous sessions can be viewed on our YouTube channel. We also encourage you to visit our website at www.jasedlak.com. Each of these sessions is intended to provide insight into the services that Sedlak and our trusted partners can provide to address your supply chain challenges. They are also intended to be interactive, so feel free to take yourself off mute when you'd like to ask a question or have a comment. However, we do ask that you please keep your mics muted when you are not asking a question. Next slide. Today's session is Outsmarting Uncertainty, Warehouse Performance Strategies in Volatile Times, presented by Dan Keto and Matt Sykes from Metrics. We'll get to the presentation in a minute, but first, we'd like to take some time to discuss Sedlak and the services we offer for those who may not be familiar with who we are or what we do. So just a quick overview of Sedlak. We're an independent supply chain consulting firm. We've been in business for over 65 years, and we're a leader in developing supply chains that are efficient, responsive, and drive the lowest total cost of ownership. And our focus is really about blending people, processes, and technology. Next slide, please. We offer 4 primary pillars of services. I'm sorry, can you go back to the other slide? I'm sorry. The first pillar is supply chain and network strategy, where we're focusing on where you should have facilities, how many of them, and how to best balance and deploy inventory. The second pillar is facility and operations design, where we're focusing at each process level and then building out all the requirements to support those processes, and then making sure we design to the right balance of equipment, technology, staffing, and flow. The third pillar is operations improvements, how to get the best performance out of the equipment, technology, and people, focusing on things like ergonomics and labor management. And the fourth pillar is IT systems. We'll help implement WMS, ERP, OMS, and labor management systems. Also systems tied to material handling like WCS, WES, and also transportation and yard management. There are 2 other services on that slide that we're showing. The first one there is project management and change management. So when it comes time to implementing our designs and solutions, we do have the resources to manage the projects on site and then assist clients with change management by offering training and transitioning to the new processes. And then finally, we do work with third-party logistics firms. So if a client is looking to outsource all or part of their operation, we'll help them find the right 3PL partner. And then we also work with the 3PLs themselves to help them improve their own operations, just like we do with the other clients. Okay, thank you. This slide just summarizes how we offer full life cycle support for our projects. These are the 4 primary project phases of our services. The first is conceptual design, where we're gathering data from the client, identifying the best suitable concepts for whatever they're planning to do, and then coming up with a capital budget, an estimated capital budget, and quantifying the ROI. Phase 2 we would take that phase 1 data and then work on a detailed design. We're putting together the final layout, sending RFIs out to vendors for bidding, and then coming back with a total package that will result in a project budget and an implementation schedule. The third phase is the implementation and integration. And then the fourth phase would be the go live realization, and we will offer go live and post go live support in phase 4. But enough about Sedlak. I'm happy to introduce Dan Keto and Matt Sykes from Easy Metrics, who are going to take us through the presentation. Dan, I'll turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Keto. I'm the president, co-founder, and CTO of Easy Metrics. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm solutions engineer here at Easy Metrics. Look forward to chatting with y'all.
Great. And so today what we're going to do is talk to you about, really it's going to be about data. The term that we focus on now is what we call warehouse performance management. And over the last, decade or so, we've really seen an explosion of data systems coming into the warehouse operations. And so we've seen organizations with up to, 15 different data sources in their warehouse. And data is the new gold, as many in the tech industry have said, and it's really kind of shocking what value you can pull out of the data once you've built the data model. And so today, what we're going to do is really talk to you about how to optimize warehouse performance using a data-driven strategy. And explain some of the technologies available, also talk about how artificial intelligence and machine learning are really disrupting the industry and how you can use those combined with your data to really drive the excellence in your organization that you're shooting for. Easy Metrics, just a little bit of background about us. We were founded around 2010. We started off as a pure play labor management firm, but we've really expanded the service offering, again, following that data strategy that has occurred in the warehouse operations. We have some very big logos, as you can see. We really have become the market leader in the labor management space, but the new industry, the new market that we're really carving into is what we call warehouse performance management. With robotics coming online, automation, and all these new data sources, the story in the warehouse from a data perspective has changed dramatically. And today we're going to share with you our approach and some of the things you can do with that information to help improve your business. So, one of the current issues that I'm sure everyone's experiencing is tariffs. Tariffs are recreating to an extent the bullwhip effect that we experienced during COVID. So if everyone remembers, unfortunately, the pandemic experience, it created massive disruptions in the supply chain. Tariffs are doing the same thing. I would say it's at a smaller impact level, but it's still there. And so, what the bullwhip effect is this surge. It's like if you look at the imports, fourth quarter and early first quarter of this year, there was a huge influx of product coming through, surge of product, because everyone was buying ahead of the tariffs. And then the tariffs hit, then all of a sudden those purchases slowed way down. So you get these surges in the supply chain that really create a lot of disruptions in your operations. So we're going to show you today how you can use your current data sources to really help guide yourself through these surges and the ebbs and flows of demand. So I'm going to step back a little bit and just talk a little bit about labor management and more about warehouse performance management. So the foundation of the data work that we do really is built off of the labor management data set. So when you look at labor management from a data perspective, it's a highly transformed and conditioned labor set. So when you build a labor management data model, you have to be very accurate in what you're doing, because you're going to make hire and fire decisions based off of that information. So, we've gone through this, this process over the last 15 years of really, optimizing how we can take all of these different workflow data sources and turn them into a highly transformed data set that gives you granular visibility into your operation. And so that foundation approach to how to convert that data into cost, performance, which would be your labor standards and all the performance factors that go into that transaction. And then the other thing we also are able to do is look at profitability by transaction. Gives you a foundational data set at a facility level, but then you can expand that across all of your facilities into a network approach, which then flows into what we call the unified data model across your whole network. That foundational set is really where the journey begins. And so we'll walk through how to approach the data story in your warehouse and how to basically create the data model to then apply artificial intelligence, machine learning to really modernize your operational workflows, get that real-time visibility that you're looking for so you can drive the decisions on the floor to meet your SLAs, drive the cost down as low as possible, and have a successful service delivery for your customers.
Hey, Dan,
Yes,
if you
sir.
could go back to that the other
Yeah.
slide, please, that you were just showing.
Mhm.
I've got a question here. So at the top, you're showing the data sources there. It looks like primarily they're coming from within the facility or internal data. Are you seeing or are clients demanding or asking you to build ways to bring in more external data from sources? Are you being challenged that way?
Yeah, we are. What we see a lot, especially with our like our retail, the retail industry, they will often outsource to 3PLs. So they'll have a hybrid model where they will run their distribution, for a lot of their core stuff, and then they'll outsource to 3PLs other pieces. And so we're seeing a lot of asks to bring that 3PL network of services in to their model as well, so they can see that holistic picture of their supply chain. When you get into certain external data sources, say like UPS shipping data, FedEx shipping data, yes, absolutely. If you want to look at, like what we do is a thing called cycle time analytics. So we'll go, dock to stock or click to ship, and click, so the shipping data is part of that story. And so when you look at especially modern e-commerce operations, customers have high expectations. It's nice to know when they clicked on that order, the time it's spent on every single stage to the point where it's actually delivered. So that would be an external data source that we've been asked to bring in as well. Certain third party, there are other third party systems. I would consider, like, say, the WMS data. If you're using a cloud service provider, that would be, in a sense, a third party system. But the reality is you own that data. It's your data. It's created by you. So you don't have to deal with, the data quality issues that are managed by an external party. It's internal. You're just leasing that tool from them. That data is yours. So, to answer specifically, yes, we are getting asked on certain things, but it's really a case-by-case basis of which data sets are available and what the value is. The challenge that we always find for getting data is we go to the source data, the transactional data. So like within a WMS system, we grab the RF scan data because that's the transaction that each associate is making. We don't want the transform data in the WMS, which is like your inventory counts, that sort of things. We build it from the transaction because there's specific rule sets within those transactions and how to accumulate the time spent on that transaction for the associate. So some of the challenges we run into with other data sources, robotics is an example that we tend to wrestle with, is a lot of the vendors are resistant to give access to that source data. I think it's going to become a requirement eventually because there's not one single data source in an organization. In fact, it's continuing to grow exponentially, all the different systems. I mean, I envision someday, companies may have 3 or 4 different robot vendors in their operations to support, the different workflow. Well, you'll need to extract the data from those different sources to bring them together into that holistic picture so you really can understand your operation.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So I want to expand the vision a little bit into the greater picture, what we're calling warehouse performance management. So when you look at a warehouse operation, there are 4 economic drivers that we focus on to drive excellence in the warehouse. So the number 1 driver is quality. Did I actually ship the right product in good condition to the customer? If you ship them the wrong product, you're not going to have a happy customer. So that is always a high visibility issue because it costs so much to get customers, especially in the e-commerce world. And if you fail, you lose that customer. Second one is on time. Did I get the product out when I said it was going to go out, so that, again, my customer is meeting the expectation and they're happy? Get those two done, then you'll have a happy customer. Then you focus on cost efficiency and profitability. And this is really where labor management sits, is like, am I doing this as effectively as possible, as cost efficient as possible? And as I've said earlier, we bring in the revenue side of things. So am I doing it as profitably as possible? Because there's multiple levers in there to drive those numbers. And then the last one is safety. Safety is one of those things that if you have a bad injury in your operation, it can completely blow your P&L, in that operation for the year. Safety injuries and things like that are very expensive. So we really, strongly encourage, safety as a major program for operations. So when we align our data models, we align it to these 4 value drivers in the organization. But then we go down to the next layer, which is, okay, I have all this data. I need to, basically understand what data is available. I inventory my data. I then go interview all my core personas that use this data. And so within that distribution center, you're going to have operations. That's your general manager, your supervisors, your shift supervisors. These are the people who are, doing the hard work and moving the product around, making sure that customer's happy. So, they have certain KPIs that they're going to look at. They have certain data sources they go to evaluate their business. So you want to interview them and understand everything that's going on there. Then you have the financial side. What's my cost to serve? What's my profitability? They have a way of looking at that information that's different than the operations, but it's also incredibly important for them as well. Then we have our industrial engineers and we have our leadership. So when you take this approach to warehouse performance and understanding your data, you really need to bring in all the vested personas in that data into the room so you understand what their needs are, because their needs are going to drive how you sculpt your data model. Your partner personas would be human resources, IT, and IT security, because that's becoming a huge issue in the market, is making sure that this data is not leaking out into the public, payroll data, any of that sort of thing. So all these personas have to come together, have a discussion, inventory the data, understand the KPIs. That kind of lays out the scope of what we need to do with this information, so then we can drive the business. Then we go down into what we call taxonomy, which is how do I want to standardize my data? Generally, when I'm just looking at one facility, not a big deal. Okay, you can set up your taxonomy because it's only at that facility. Here's where the rub is. You're going to find that across your facilities, you're going to have different nomenclature within the WMS, in the different systems for the different processes. That different nomenclature makes it very difficult to unify the data, because now you're calling things the same thing, different things in different environments. And I'll give you an example. We have a great client of ours up in Toronto, Canada. When they went through this process, they have 11 facilities just in Toronto, all in the same WMS. They had different nomenclature for their processes and metrics across all their facilities. So the first step they had to do was go through and standardize that nomenclature, because that then gives you the ability to do comparative modeling across your network and extract best practices and basically unify that data so you can tell the story to run your business. And then once you've gone through that process of standardizing the taxonomy, then you have all these capabilities you can get out of the data that then drive the excellence in your business. So, quality, safety, forecasting, cost to serve, and we'll talk about a lot of these in a more granular level today. Then the other thing we also look at, and you see this in the lower left-hand corner, is what we call the warehouse performance management maturity model. And this is really evaluating where you are on this process of modernization of data and artificial intelligence, and also where you want to be. And so as you do this model, this isn't something you just knock out in a couple of weeks. This is really a strategic approach. And so you really have to look at this as a multi-year process to evolve your business from highly disparate data sources into a unified data model, into a cadence where now I'm using artificial intelligence to help find where my opportunities are and drive certain decisions in the business. And so that's something that we work with our partners like Sedlak to help guide customers through this process. So I talked a little bit about taxonomy. This is a poster that we can make available to people. This is just really the approach to how to standardize how I look at my warehouse. So this is just our recommended model, but this is a methodology to go through with the operations. So again, step one is inventory and gather my data. What do I have available for information? I guarantee everyone's going to have gaps in their information. That's just the way it is. If you've never done this process before, one of the common areas is indirect labor. Most groups, unless they've implemented a full labor management system, generally do not have indirect labor capture. Well, if you look at any modern warehousing operation, between 40 and 50% of your labor in that facility, that work is going to be indirect labor. That could be, sweeping out the containers. It could be, changing the batteries of my forklift. We've got our 15-minute stand-up meetings in the morning, for stretching and just, distribution of information. All of these little things add up, and it accumulates to quite a bit of amount. So getting visibility into that is critical, because if we're just optimizing our direct labor, what will end up happening is that savings in the direct labor spill over to those other areas. The other thing you're going to find is within your WMS data, you're going to have gaps in data collection. You'll find certain areas may not have data capture. Value-added services is a real common one, where if I have a team of 10 or 15 people doing a repack line, often that information is not available in the WMS. So there's ways to structure data to be able to capture the associates on the line, as well as the output that they're able to produce. So again, going through that process, mapping all the processes, mapping all the data available, and then how we're going to use that data, creating a common nomenclature, and then what are the outputs we want from that data for the various stakeholders in our business, so they are getting the information they need without having to go into spreadsheets and grind it. Ultimately, what you want is all of this served up on a silver platter, coming to you at the frequency that you need it. In some cases, you want things every 5-10 minutes, basically real time. Other things, it might be a monthly reporting, especially when you get into profitability and things like that. A lot of organizations, don't need that on a real time basis. Again, it's available if you want it, but there's always a cost associated with those different things. So we're going to talk a little about AI and how to structure an AI architecture for the business. So what I talked about earlier was the data model. I can't emphasize this enough. Your AI and machine learning path starts with the data. If you do not go through the process of constructing a clean and structured data model, you will have challenges on multiple levels trying to implement artificial intelligence on that unstructured data. The outcomes of doing it without the unified data model will be extreme cost, because AI models in unstructured are about 100 times more expensive than a normal structured model. You're also going to get a lot of errors because you haven't scrubbed and cleansed the data and formed it, so then you can apply this technology to it. And I'll give you some examples of cost overruns and so forth that we've experienced ourselves internally, but also our customers experience working with these different technologies. So how we approach this, and this is really, I would say this is the standard enterprise approach for organizations in building an AI architecture. Again, we start with the unified data model. Now, with Easy Metrics, a ton of these transformations are built into the software. So we're able to take your raw input data of your time clocks and your WMS and TMS and your MRP and all the different systems, and through the tooling in the software, give that output of that unified data model rather quickly. Groups that do not have that sort of thing can do it themselves, but it really is going to be about an 18-month to 24-month endeavor to build all the tooling to form that data model. So from the layer of the unified data model, then what we do is we create what we call investigations. So within our unified data model, how we build it is for each transaction, we have cost data. So it cost me 38 cents to do this transaction. We have performance data, which is the engineered labor standard. This associate scored 112% on the labor standard. Then we have engineering data, which is all the metrics associated with that process. So if it's a pick, it can be, number of cases, the feet traveled to do the pick, what type of equipment I did, what was the vertical on that, what was the weight of the case, how many lines did I do, how many orders. This is all this, granular data that's used to build the labor standard. But the other thing that's really exciting is within all those metrics, there's ways to look at those metrics, and I'll show you some examples later that give you insights into the health of the process. So that's the core basis of our unified data model. Then from there, we extract all these different investigations. And so currently we've built about 15 machine learning investigations, but we're working with our customers to find out all the ways they're using our data to solve problems in their business. We can then create more of these investigations. So what an investigation is basically a machine learning computer algorithm. It's written in code that goes through and does a complex calculation. So I'll give you an example of one that we're working on for one of our clients. It's what is the true cost of overtime? So depending on your region and your labor contracts, normally overtime is 50% surcharge of the hourly wage over 40 hours a week, or in some cases over 8 hours a day or whatever. When I'm working overtime, I often get tired depending on the type of work I'm doing. So my last couple hours of work, I'm working that overtime on, let's say I'm working a 10-hour day instead of an 8, I'm going to have fatigue. So what is that real cost of overtime? It may not be a 50% charge. It might be 100% surcharge because my productivity is going down because I'm tired. So we can actually look into the data and calculate by process what that true cost of overtime is, take into account fatigue, and then recalculate that if you were to hire X amount of FTEs to offset the overtime, it would reduce your cost structure by this amount per quarter or per year. These are the sorts of stories that are in the data, and we're gathering these to help customers solve these problems. And what's really exciting about this approach is, it now feeds this information to you as a customer versus you having to go out there and dig into it and discover it yourself. So what we've done is we've built out this library of investigations. And again, this is continuing to grow. And then we can leverage that against a language model. This is your ChatGPTs or your Geminis against our trained knowledge base. And also we've trained it on verticals within the supply chain. And then it basically can give you an executive readout that says, okay, across your network, here's where your biggest financial opportunities are to drive down costs, improve profitability. From an engineering perspective, hey, your feet traveled per line picked in this facility is 40% higher than the other facilities, and it's a higher variation over where it was a year ago. You should maybe look at optimizing your layout or possibly investing in slotting software. I mean, these are the sorts of insights you can get out of that. So then this rolls into what's called agentic AI. So agentic AI is really this use of AI to help automate a lot of administrative processes. So the way we're configuring this is each user can go in there and say, these are the investigations that I want to have run, and this is the frequency that I want to have it run. So if I'm a supervisor, perhaps I want my investigations to occur every hour, so I can, it can tell me, hey, I need to go take this action here or there, based on the rule sets. At an executive level, I may only care about a monthly readout to look at the profitability and cost efficiency opportunities across my network. So the agentic model is continually evolving as well, based on the investigations and the use cases of the customers. And then that rolls into then all the reporting and the applications, emailed actions, alerting, and that sort of thing. So again, this is, groups that are looking to really build an internal AI strategy. This is really kind of the best practices that we're seeing, in the enterprise space in our industry. And so each of these are different components of AI, but they all integrate together to give you those insights to your business and drive the change that you're looking for.
Hey, Dan, another
Yes, sir.
question here. At the top, you've got emailed actions. Can you give an example of what that looks like? Do you need to have a standard format if it's coming through email, or is your AI running to look for keywords? Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of one of the AI features that we're releasing actually this month. It's our executive readout. So in the executive readout, it leverages against our visualization tool. So we use Sisense reporting in our suite and our language model. And so executives, and then we train the model to write an executive brief. So what it would do is in an email, it would send to that executive a summary of each facility, explaining, basically any variances that have occurred between your network of facilities and variances over time, because you need to look, because workflow changes over time, and that may cause some changes in your numbers. And it basically just says, okay, we tend to drive this towards key KPIs around labor management because, that's our background, but we'd be looking at, what's my cost to serve? How has that changed by process? What is my missing time? Which is your utilization. Do I have a lot of downtime that I'm paying for, but I'm not getting value out of? What's my productivity levels? What's my indirect scores? So we look at all of these things, look how they're tracking over time, how they're tracking against other facilities, and then it financializes that and says, hey, your missing time in Chicago, is running 20% higher than the rest of your network. If you were to get that into the network average, you would save $130,000 this month on that. And so then, and then it'll show you graphs and charts within that executive readout. And again, this is all configurable. And then within there's links. So if you click on the email, it would take you right into the application where then you could do more exploration yourself if you wanted to drill down to say, hey, what really was going on there? Was it individual productivity or whatever? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And to the audience too, if any of you have questions, you can either ask by unmuting your mic, or feel free to use the chat there too. You can put it in the meeting chat, and then we'll bring it up for discussion. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Yeah, and so I think what AI is going to do for us, especially with warehouse performance management, is it gives you the ability now to deal with all of this data. It is shocking the amount of data now being generated in the warehouse. And it gives you a systemic way to find where those opportunities are. Because imagine, we have clients with hundreds of facilities in their network. The old school BI tools where you go in and look at your graphs and charts and all of that, it's great for snapshots and views, but it often still requires explorations in there. With AI, you can automate that exploration. And so now it will go through and swim through your network of 100 facilities and then identify you based on the rule sets. Here's where the problems are. Here's where you should be focusing. And then what we like to do is always monetize that, because it's always interesting the different lenses through which you see a business. Engineers will often look at that labor standard, which is, very important to make sure everyone's being productive. But you may be looking at a bad labor standard at a process, but that process is 1% of your labor cost. Not that important to optimize, where when you look at your picking labor could be 60% of your labor cost, 70%. So a small change in your picking efficiency has a much bigger effect financially than, say, that 1% labor cost battery changes or whatever it is. So with the way we model things, we always like to try as best possible to monetize what that change will be, because that helps you prioritize really where I should be focusing. So just to talk about labor standards and not labor standards, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So Easy Metrics actually has been, under today's definitions, AI enabled almost since its foundation. So one of the tools that we have built that has been a big disruptor in traditional labor management is our machine learning labor standards tool called Standard One. And so what we're able to do is run every metric on the process through the system. It calculates the correlation of the metric to the output labor standard and the correlation of each metric to other metrics. So, traditionally, with a more a bulk force industrial engineering approach is I want to get as many metrics as I possibly can out of the data. Well, there's a cost to collecting those metrics. You may have to make changes to your data sources. You have to figure out how to get some of that information. With our tool, it actually shows you the correlation of all those metrics and how that all relates to the output. So then you may not actually need as much of that data as you do. And so this, basically, if we can get it, we get about 1,000 data points on a process, meaning 1,000 transactions, we can build a statistically significant data set. And so it takes that industrial engineering process and collapses the effort and time needed by the engineers building the standards dramatically, can generally reduce it by about 80 or 90%. And so instead of doing, the brute force method of time and motion studies and spreadsheet grinding, a lot of this can be streamlined. And then the engineers can focus what they're really best at, which is we have certain processes where the labor standard is just all over the place. There's not a tight correlation to it. Now let's figure out what can we do to get, either standardize the process or get the information we need for that process so we can build that tight labor standard. So, again, all these things have been around for a long time. AI, the big investment, I guess, push behind AI is bringing a lot of these technologies, to the forefront now as being needed. But we see, how we see the market evolving is, data is going to drive dramatic change for us as people become more sophisticated in how to understand data and work with it. I think it really is going to transform how businesses operate. Decisions will be made objectively off of data versus more intuitively how they are done in a lot of different facilities. Another use case that we do is we call this advanced labor forecasting. But basically, we've trained a machine learning model off of historical throughput. And so what this means is, if you look at most businesses, there's a certain cyclicality that occurs. It can occur intraday, daily, weekly, monthly, seasonally. We're able to take in, historical data to then look at those patterns that occur and then forecast next day, next week, based off historical models, what that expected workflows are going to be. So this works really well with businesses that have, a reasonable amount of cyclicality to their business. And so when we do this, what we do is we tune the models based off the historical. So we're basically curve fitting data, and then we're able to project that into the future. So with one of our clients who we basically, collaborated to build this tool with, they actually are able to forecast by hour what their inbound volume is, because they are basically a same day, order today, ship today retailer. And so they're able to actually forecast within about a 5% variance by hour what that inbound volume is, and then adjust on the fly where their staffing needs are going to be based on that forecast. But because it's a data story, we can do this, based on the data volume, down, daily and weekly. Obviously, to get into a monthly forecast, you would need years of data to do that. So it's again, it's a data-driven strategy. But this is one of the areas that we're very excited about. I think there's a lot of work that can be done with forecasting, and so we've built what we call automated forecasting model, to look at historical trends and guide people, based off of that, what those expected volumes are. And what's cool about this is you can tune the models to take into account holidays, weekends, and so forth when you're building the data set. So it gives you a pretty tight forecasting model. And then the other one that's also exciting is what we call intraday forecasting, or and this is where you would ingest your order data, your wave planning data, and we're able to basically tell you, by process, by department, how much labor you're going to need to meet SLA and get the product out the door. And so our next big phase on this is actually integrating those two models together. Because with intraday forecasting, the challenge you have is, let's say you do a certain percent of your business in e-commerce, you will not have visibility into orders that are coming in between, if it's 8 a.m., you don't have visibility yet on orders that are going to be dropping between 10 and 1, which is, maybe where your cutoff is. So taking the previous forecasting model where we're able to, look at historical volumes and give you a projection, we can integrate these two models together to help clients, make sure that they have the right number of people in the right spots to get the work done that they need. So these are, two simple use cases. Other more advanced use cases in algorithmic forecasting would be load balancing between equipment and people. And so, we work with different partners on the machine side where we're basically optimizing the labor, they optimize the machines. And so then that way you're able to orchestrate that workflow. And this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue as we move more into automation. Distribution centers I see are going to kind of evolved to almost like manufacturing facilities where you have these large, operations like an auto store or something that are handling a big chunk of a process. It has a certain throughput capacity. How do you load balance your labor, on the front end and the back end of that piece of equipment to optimize your cost structure and your SLA performance? I'm going to pass this over to Matt now, so he can actually walk through the application, show you basically how we are, running the day-to-day operations, or our clients are running the day-to-day operations on our system. Rob, are there any other questions before I pass it to Matt?
No questions right now.
Okay. All right, Matt,
Great.
take it away.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dan. So right now, what I am showing is the network-wide view. So as Dan mentioned previously, right, it's a single point of integration. So let's say in this case, right, you have several different facilities, one point of integration for that unified data layer, and we can give you visibility, again, single sign-on to your whole network of facilities. So it's really powerful if you're a director or vice president level and you want to quickly gain insights across your network. And one of the things that I really like and our customers really like about this view and just our software in general is how user friendly it is and how easy it is to cross filter. So right now the three main KPIs, productivity, indirect, and missing time, are aggregated across your network. But if I wanted to look at, let's say, Atlanta, for instance, everything is interactive. So you're able to just click on Atlanta and then you can drill in, and all of the widgets across the screen will update based off of those filters that you set. So we really want to put the easy metrics and empower users within a matter of minutes to gain actionable insights to then drive their business. So in this case, maybe the director can drill in on Atlanta within a few minutes, find out where the productivity might be lacking, and then have a conversation with their associates. Drilling it down a little bit further, if we wanted to look at productivity, can go to our dedicated productivity dashboard. And this, again, is at the network-wide view based off of a labor standards, data-driven standards approach. So you have a percent-based, generally optimized around 100%, but that is configurable. You're able to very quickly see, okay, which of my facilities might be struggling and why. You can see here, okay, Memphis and Phoenix are low, right? 69.6% at Memphis with 12,000 hours. Well, what's the cost unit? So what's the volume that I'm putting through? So you can start to apply some costing data to that. Again, drilling into that, now we can then cross-filter just for Memphis. Again, if I'm a director and see, okay, well, why are they struggling and where are they struggling? And then look at our process table, sort that by hours, right? Do a little Pareto here and see, okay, maybe in the cross stock, 61.3%, what is the cost associated with that lower productivity and how could we potentially improve that? So it's really kind of highlights your low-hanging fruit and where you can go to optimize. I guess I'll pause here. Any questions, or Dan, any comments here that you'd like to pile in?
No, I think the big thing is getting that visibility is so
Yeah.
critical. I can't just I just look at modern distribution centers. The complexity is just off the charts. People always marvel when they walk through a modern DC. They just have no idea how complex things are, and so when they see that, it's eye-opening. And so, datafying that complexity into simple ways to run your business is critical. And so that I think that's what we're trying to show here is that we can bring all that data together for you and really give you those insights so you can make the right decisions in your business.
Dan and Matt, another question here.
Yes, sir.
So often we have clients that are really interested in wanting all this information real time. And of course, we know it takes time to pull the data and refresh, and it all comes at a cost. But what are you seeing as the smallest increment of time where your clients are calling this real time? Is it every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes? What are you seeing?
So for one of our extremely large clients, we're doing it in 5 minutes. The thing to understand is we're moving away from an on-premise world of software. The cost of managing the servers, there's just a lot of challenges with that. Everyone's moving more towards the cloud. And so you tend not to be able to do what you call a rigid coupling with the data. And frankly, groups are concerned about that. We've had groups that say, hey, the operator's like, I want this, but if you're hitting the production server and pulling that data, every time you pull the data, it can create latency in the server, which ripples through into the scan guns on the floor. And so you can imagine if you're hitting that server every 5 minutes to pull the data, you click and it creates like a 3-second latency in the scan guns every time you're doing that pull, and you've got 500 workers on the floor with scan guns. You actually can run the numbers on that. It becomes a very expensive endeavor. So we work with the clients to find out where their data infrastructure is. And what's the best way to get the data. What we're finding now is many groups now are investing in data warehouse technologies. So that could be your Snowflakes, your Databricks, your BigQueries, and so forth. And so they're able to set up near real-time transfers into those data sources. Then we can go in and we can grab that data and pull it across. In general, trying to do that on a prod server, groups don't want to do that because of that latency issue. So you're either going to set up a read-only copy of your WMS, or you basically set up a transfer mechanism into a data warehouse technologies. If you want that super high velocity data, groups that are doing more traditional, say flat file transfers and so forth, we're seeing 15 minutes to an hour, and a lot of it again comes down to what is the current data infrastructure they have. The other thing to consider is we're moving into multiple data sources, and so you're only as fast as your slowest data source. So maybe your WMS has that capacity to go high velocity, but you have other data sources that don't have that refresh capability. So then you can only really gear towards that slower data source when you bring the data together. Again, this is all part of the process. We really help companies evaluate, where they are infrastructure-wise, where their needs are to help scope the right service delivery.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. No, appreciate that. And if I may just quickly add on, so one of our customers in our demo environment, at least, we are getting that intraday data. So just assume you get that data, for example, every hour. One thing that we can empower our customers to do is to get that intraday visibility. So in this case, the customer is able to give us the data, and we can map it out here on a 30-minute increment. And you can really see, okay, where are my gaps, right? The gaps being the red jumping off the page. Gap time could be either, Matt was tardy after lunch. Matt took a post-lunch lunch, pre-break break, or just did not log his time properly while doing an indirect function. And what we generally found is our customers, we don't recommend living and dying by the intraday and kind of sitting at your desk refreshing every 5 minutes. Generally, it's, hey, check easy metrics at the start of the day. How did I do yesterday around first break, lunch, and second break? And then that can empower you to have those real-time conversations while still having time to walk the floor and coach your associates.
Having done this for, let me real quick, Matt, having worked in this world for gosh, probably 30 years, the fascinating thing, because we actually used to run 4PL. We ran we had about 1,000 employees across multiple operations in the U.S. Doing large cross-docking operations for Home Depot, Walmart, and Target. And the thing that's really interesting is when you really get into the details of this stuff, the biggest money and the easiest money to capture is eliminating those blocks of red, because that's just dead time. That's where no one's doing something. And it's often can be a break in a process, lack of thinking ahead. And so by identifying and getting full visibility, I mean, we literally can show where every second of the day of associate is being spent. Identifying where those gaps are in productivity, meaning they're not doing anything, just addressing that, you can see a 5 to 10% labor cost reduction in an operation. When we start with companies, on average, if they've not gone through this process, they will run, believe it or not, about 25% blind time or missing time per day. Now, a lot of that is, incorrect data capture, but a lot of it is just true dead time. And by identifying that and addressing it, you can drive extremely fast ROI. I mean, literally in 30 to 60 days tops on the system to get that efficiencies, into the system and really get the waste out. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I couldn't agree more. And one of the places that we can highlight this is through the intraday detail table. And this really spells it out for your supervisors who are driving down this dead time. You say, okay, what was the associate doing before and after this dead time or this gap time? So in this case, 4.4 minutes, not the end of the world, but you can see, okay, Betsy in this case was doing picking, 6:13, and then there was a gap of about 5 minutes to 6:19. So when you're trying to drive the dead time down, it empowers you to have a data-driven conversation with the associate and say, hey, here's exactly what you were doing when, here's when we had your next task, what happened, what caused the gap. And it really kind of takes a lot of the I think and I feel out of these accountability conversations to become more data-driven. And we found that, associates are way more receptive to being coached when it's backed by data.
And then the next phase of evolution here is then serving that to that supervisor. Hey, here are some areas you should be looking at today, because these things fell way outside of the norm. You might want to go talk to this associate and say, hey, why do we have 30 minutes of missing time here? What happened? And then they may have been something like, oh, well, I had to clean up an aisle or whatever, and they just didn't log their work or whatever. But it gives you that visibility to take corrective action at the moment it's happening versus way after the fact.
Great. Well, the last dashboard I wanted to show you all today is our cost to serve, where we can apply labor costs directly to both at the facility level all the way down to as granular as we're able to get at the process or the employee level. So you can see, okay, what's my cost per unit? Again, if I'm a network user, vice president over all of these facilities, over the past week, I can see my cost per unit across all 8 facilities and say, okay, well, Phoenix is a lot higher. What happened in Phoenix to drive that increase in cost per unit? You can click in here, cross filter, and then really drill down to that level of granularity, that Dan was talking about earlier. At the shift level, supervisor and process, and see, hey, is there a particular process that we are way out of step with? What's my cost per unit? And then you go back to, okay, well, if I'm a 3PL, what's my, if I'm on a fixed rate contract, okay, here's my costs. Well, what's my, what am I billing? And then what's the delta there? And how can I drive this down? So in this case, they had a lot of training here that may be inflating it, maybe expected. It can drive, future conversations here. I'll pause
Rob,
there.
Yeah, Rob, are we? Is this the webinar over at 10?
We have technically about another 20 minutes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I guess we could. I know we had some questions you would. If you wanted to tee up some of those questions you had earlier for us, we could go ahead and talk to those.
Sure, sure. So, one of the questions that comes up is, all this is all this data can seem overwhelming for companies. So, where do you think is the easiest place for a company to start using this data if they're not really using it at the level that you've shared with us now? Where should they begin?
Excellent question. I forgot who it was forgot the name of the gentleman, but basically you manage what you measure. If you don't have any measurements in place, start with baseline measurements. I mean, the number one business intelligence tool in the market is Microsoft Excel. And so, at least starting there, starting with macro KPIs. Looking at what's my cost per unit out of a facility, what's my units per hour by process. I mean, those are some basic metrics that can be pretty easily gathered out of the warehouse management system and start establishing those baselines. But ultimately, it's a continuous process to do this. So you can start measuring on a macro level and then go down layer after layer after layer until you get to this hyper granular state that we've created this experience within the system. But you've got to start somewhere, and the challenge is aligning the proper measurements. I remember when we were running the Walmart, one of the Walmart facilities, and the manager is like, a box is a box. And so we had one day where the units per hour were through the roof because we were cross-docking soft lines. It was basically tennis shoes, 8,000 cases on a container, maybe 4 or 5 SKUs. So your UPH were like 300 per hour. Then the next day we were doing swimming pools and barbecues. The swimming pools, you could put, I think it was like 15 on a container. Barbecues, you could get 40, and they were team lift. So your units per hour were like 20 per hour. And the managers were just freaking out, all upset because of the variance between one day and the other. You have to, so when you look at these measurements, you have to understand that there's going to be variances in workflow. So if you measure that over a long period of time, those variances will even out, right? But if you're actually going to try to hold employees accountable, unless you're just doing a very standardized process, making widgets all day long, which doesn't really occur in distribution, you're going to need more granularity to actually calculate this. So I guess my recommendation is start where you can with what you got, and then really put a roadmap together organizationally saying, I want to get to here by this time, and then set up a process in place to evaluate the data, how I'm going to get the data, how do I calculate this information, to then systematize that and bring it through the organization.
Okay, thanks. Another question we're getting is, at the beginning of the session, you'd mentioned the tariffs, which are on everybody's radar right now, and then of course the pandemic and the interruptions it caused. But how is AI being used in all these data analytics to help build like predictive models so you can anticipate delays in the supply chain or disruptions? Any thoughts on that?
I will probably be a little myopic in this answer because we tend to focus, really heavily on the warehouse operation.
Okay.
And so to answer on that one, you should have visibility into the surges that are occurring. So, we're seeing this, within our own customer bases. There are these big ups and downs in their volumes going through their facility based on that bullwhip effect. So if you're a 3PL, you would be working with your customer to find out what those demands are. If you're a retailer, a Home Depot or whatever, you know what you're buying ahead of time and so forth. So you can bring that volume data through and then run it through forecasting models to then calculate your staffing requirements to meet those needs. So under that myopic view, that's how I would do this. On a more macro basis, understanding how the tariff is going to affect volumes and purchasing patterns and things like that. It's much more difficult to do because I wouldn't have an answer for that because I don't have access to the data to know how a Home Depot is changing their order patterns to manage the tariffs. I mean, really what a lot of groups are doing is shifting where it's coming from as best possible to get around that. And so that, again, it's the visibility. If you have visibility, you can run numbers, use these tools to calculate what you're going to need. If you don't have visibility, I think you would have difficulty getting an accurate forecast of the changes, just because you're having humans make decisions on their order volumes based on these changing factors.
Okay. And then, based on the clients you've worked with so far, do you have a case study or a success story for, you don't have to name the client, of course, but, that have really made significant strides and really turned their business around, by taking this approach, like total ops financial management?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the automated forecasting, we built it in collaboration with one of our customers, and it's been phenomenal. I mean, they've been able to roll this out across their whole network of facilities, and it's helped them dramatically with their staffing levels to know where the people are needed, because they basically load balance throughout the day between inbound and outbound, and having that visibility in being able to forecast what those inbound volumes are going to be so they can staff appropriately is critical. Because if you have too many people, you're paying for dead time. If you don't have enough people, you're paying overtime. So getting that optimized. And so we have several clients that have had really good success with that tool. I would say it's a case-by-case basis because we have to look at the data and see if there's enough cyclical significance to the data to be able to do the forecast. So like an example when that'd be difficult would be, say, a multi-tenant 3PL where they're churning their tenants frequently. That would be a difficult one to run forecasts to because your data sets are changing too much to be able to do that significantly. I would say on the machine learning side with the data solver tool, I would think, as a matter of fact, even our customers with robust industrial engineering teams leverage that tool dramatically to reduce the effort to maintain the labor standards. In general, it's gonna, if you look at a 300,000 or 400,000 square foot facility, back in the napkin rule of thumb, it's going to be $200,000 to $250,000 if you were to outsource the industrial engineering to figure out what all those labor standards are, because of the brute force method to do it. If you can work with the tooling that we have combined with those engineers, you can bring that cost probably down to about $50,000. The other thing is it allows you to maintain your standards as changes occur with clicks of a button versus having to have engineers come in through and recalculate it. And then if the standard isn't tight, then the engineers can come in and really focus on it and solve the problem to make that standard better. Another really powerful success case we've had is what we call profit management. So this is something we built out with one of our customer partners is UPS, which is we can it's a 3PL, so we're actually able to ingest the rate sheets for each of their customers, run that against the cost model so they can see daily what the profitability is by customer, by process, by employee. And so in the 3PL world, that is such a powerful driver to really understand, am I pricing my services properly to make money? If I'm not, do I go back to the customer or do I invest in technologies that can maybe bring my cost structures down? It's all about this visibility, and bringing it as real time as possible is absolutely critical.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead. I'd like to open it up to the audience to ask questions. Again, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. I'm sorry, Matt, you started to say something, I think.
Yeah, no worries. I was just going to pile on one brief success story, just my personal experience. So I'm an industrial engineer by degree. I spent a lot of my career in warehouses with tennis shoes and a stopwatch and my most card, building out labor standards. quote, traditional way or the brute force way, and really the data-driven standards approach. Because I was a customer of Easy Metrics before I'm now on this side of the fence. Really empowered me to, from a maintenance perspective, versus having to go to my boss and get T&E approved to fly out to a site for a couple weeks to do time studies and and update these standards, to then really be able to do that remotely. Because you're able to just go in using that machine learning big data approach to tweak the standards, and it empowered me and my engineering team to really focus from an opportunity cost perspective to use that time saved on Six Sigma and other continuous improvement projects. So it was a huge value add for us.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because there's still a lot. I mean, people are evolving and clients are evolving in their opinions on the traditional labor standards versus the database standards there. But yeah, there's a lot of advantages to it, and I think people are starting to realize the benefits. Any questions from the audience? Okay. Dan and Matt, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Be very thoughtful how you use AI. I'll just give you a couple real world examples. One of our big customers was given free access through our tooling to some AI models. So it was free, but they just had one engineer playing around with it for 2 days, and the cost structure would have been $3,700 for using the AI on the large data sets. And the reason is because when you run these different things and you're asking questions to do searches, the AI systems don't cost optimize it. And then we, as our own example, we were doing, some detailed profitability opportunity analysis, and in one day we racked up $1,700 in bills in the modeling, which is kind of the R&D cost because you got to figure this stuff out. Once we got it completely optimized, the cost structure was under $1 to do it. So this is very sophisticated technology that you have to be cognizant of the performance that you need, meaning how fast do I need this information, and more importantly, the cost, because these tools, again, super powerful, but super expensive if you let them run wild. And what we're seeing is, MIT actually about 2 weeks ago released a report on AI initiatives in corporate America, and they found that less than 5% are generating positive ROI. So there's been a big rush into this stuff, and AI is going to change the world, but it's not going to be, overnight like everyone thinks it is. There's an adoption process to cost optimize, performance optimize, and most importantly, ROI optimize. Am I getting value out of this for the cost that I spend? And so going back to how we started this, it starts with the data story, building the unified data model. Once you have that in place, these other pieces come much easier, much quicker, and will fit within that ROI model. If you try to just run this on raw data, it's going to be a very expensive endeavor, and it's questionable if you're going to get the results you need.
All right, great advice there. Thank you. Well, if there are no more questions, would like to remind everybody that you will receive an email when this session and the recording is available on YouTube. So keep your eyes out for that. Otherwise, thank you, Dan and Matt, for presenting today. We appreciate it. We appreciate everybody attending. Thank you, and
Great.
everyone have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thanks very much.